This is an explanation of how to do some MIDI manipulation in Max for Live, or Max, MSP. So I wanted to cover a couple things here. First off, I find that it's easiest to learn anything, any software I've found, if I have a specific problem I'm trying to solve. And so just going to focus on just that problem, just one problem here, but also try to make it sort of a general introduction to Max in case you've never used it. That's the software that I use for all sorts of MIDI processing. It's a graphic interface. It's a graphic programming language, which you can see right here. In fact, my video is being captured in Max. And so it's a bunch of, instead of lines of code, there are different objects, and you connect the objects together with patch cables. And it was developed for to be something for friendly to artists to be able to manipulate audio initially, and now it's expanded into video as well. And I have used it for a while for video processing, but also just for data processing. I've never used it for audio, which is one thing that it was originally used for, and very good. But anyway, so I just want to do a super simple overview of that, but I'm not going to get into too much detail, but just sort of an idea of what it is if you've never used it before. Max is not free. Years ago, I bought the license because it has a large user community, and it has a lot of tutorials built in, and they've been working on, over the decades, they've been working on really making the interface as friendly as possible to work with. And so for me, it was worth, since I'm not a programmer professionally, I thought it was worth it to me to pay, I think it's $300 or $400 now, maybe to just buy the license. But now they have the subscription service as well, where it's something like $10 a month. And it's also free for the first 30 days. And also, it's free to run any Max patch. You just can't save if you don't have the license. There is a free version called Pure Data, PD, which a lot of people use. Miller Pouquet, who developed Max originally, when he sold it to Cycling 74, that's the company that has been developing it, he did his own branch, PD, which is, I've never used. It's very similar in many, doing a lot of the same things, but doesn't have the interface. So anyway, what I'm going to do here now is not an exhaustive class or anything like that, but I just wanted to I will also sort of walk through just how, like, my problem solving, my process in figuring out this MIDI problem, and I'll show you also how to find the things you need within Max if you are interested in Max, and then bring it into Max for Live. So the initial problem I was trying to solve was Finn on EMS was wondering if there's a way of changing out the MIDI channel every time a note comes in to spit a note information out. So if you had an arpeggiator going, every time there's a note, it would randomly pick what MIDI channel it's going to go out to, so it could go out to any one of a number of devices randomly every time a note comes in. And that seems pretty simple, I thought. So anyway, I'm going to get rid of my video screen here. So just in Max, it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to make a new Max window here. So this is what a Max window looks like when you just open it up. Up at the top, there are different kinds of objects that you can create, and then you connect them through with patch cables. So the types of objects you can create are just an object, generic object. You can type in what it is, what function it has. You can do a message, you can do a comment, which is just notes, toggle. I'll show each of these. There's a shortcut as well. So if I was just to make a new object, I would type N, and then I would start typing here what I want it to be. So if I wanted it to be a message, I would type message. And you can see as you start typing, this is pretty small. Hopefully you can see it. As you type message, oh, I can make it bigger. All right. as I start typing, you can see all the things, all the different options show up. So that's why I like Macs, because then you type message, boop, and it turns into a message box. You can also press M and it will just create a new message box. T for toggle. This is on or off. You can do a slider. Oops, that's a comment box. S is for a slider. That sends out note values. I is for integer. It's a number box. F is for floating point. Same thing, but there's a decimal. And right now it's all unlocked. I can lock the patch by either clicking this lock button down here or else holding down the command key on a Mac and just clicking anywhere on the background. Now it's locked and I can manipulate the box freely by clicking on that and moving up and down to make the number larger or smaller. If I unlock it and I do that, I'll just drag it around. But I can also hold down the command button and change the numbers within this. So for what I'm going to do here, looks like I probably need to do more explaining to really explain everything, but I'll just try to talk about the MIDI aspect of it. So this is these little dots here are where you connect. So if I drag out a patch cable here, plug it into the right-hand side of this message box, it will now update the message box with whatever is coming into it. So if it's numbers, you can see the message box is now updating with the message that's coming into it. Now if I click on the message box, it will send that whatever is in here out. So I'm going to put another message box down here so we can just sort of monitor what's coming out of it. So if I click on it, that is coming out of it. Now I'm just going to change this to hello there. And now I'm going to click on it and hello there comes out. And I'm going to change it, update it again so it's numbers. So then I can click on that and it will come out. So if I have another number box, I'll make this 1. We'll be using this kind of stuff later. 0. I'm going to plug these in here. So 1, 0. Click on these 1, 0. Now if I make a bang, this object here, a B is a bang. If I click on that, it's just going to send bang out of it. And that's basically like a trigger in modular synthesizers. So that just makes something happen. So if I plug it into the right inlet of a message box, it's going to update the message. But if I plug it into the left inlet that is red, meaning something will happen, if I click on that, so right now the blue inlet means nothing is happening. So if I change this, it's changing the message, but it's not sending it out, you see. But if I put it into, if anything comes into the right hand, it will send out of here whatever's in the message box. Hello, Isaac. All right, so I'm basically changing the number here. This is all sort of basic stuff, but it's going to be the process of Macs. It can very simply solve some problems, but then once you get into the order of operations, that's where it gets really complicated, because Macs is a lot of fun. It's very straightforward. It's very easy to sort of use when you've never really done a lot of, if you're not a programmer, if you aren't familiar with, typing programming languages, it's just very easy because you just connect together these different objects. But the logic of it can get a little complicated. So some things that would be very simple with lines of code, like repeating, for instance, if you just wanted to repeat the same thing over and over again, becomes more complicated with Mac. So you have to have many copies of something. Or there are other ways to figure it out. But anyway, that's the puzzle of it. So it's basically a puzzle. So anyway, I'm just basically going over some of the basic different, some of the basic objects. This is what Max does. So what Max is really cool for is it takes things in, spits things out. So like I had before, this is my camera. What I've got here is an object up in the corner here. JIT is jitter. So the three different, within Max is basically the signal processing, named for Max Matthews, who's, I think it was 1957 or something like that, is credited for writing the first computer music program. So Max does the logic. Then MSP is the signal processing, and that does the audio. I've never actually done anything with MSP. even though that's kind of what it initially was for. And then there's jitter, which is the video side of it. And I've done a lot with the jitter. Jitter is named for Miller Pouquet's cat. He's the programmer of Max. That's what I hear anyway. So anyway, here, this is basically, these are the objects you would do to create a video window. So this is the jitter.quicktime.grab. So it's grabbing video from some source. And then I just put a message, sent the message to it open, and then set the message to it close. So that will start it and stop it grabbing. And I could figure out, I could give it more information of where I want it to grab the video from, but it's just reaching for the first thing available, which is my webcam. And then this metronome here is sending, as long as it's turned on, which is done with this toggle, it will send a bang every however many milliseconds. So it's every 33 milliseconds. So that's about 30 frames per second, 30 times per second. It's going to send a bang out, and that will update the video. If I turn this off, I'm going to turn on, create a bang, just a manual button here. And I'm going to put that into that. And every time I click it now, it's going to update, you see. But we can automate that by just having the metronome send clicks out. So anyway, I'm going to close this. Don't need this anymore. So I'm going to stop explaining basic modules and just sort of as they come up, I'll explain what they do. So this is the basic idea is you have, the basic idea is that with Max, what's so cool about it is it can make anything do anything. So you can turn anything into numbers, and then you can manipulate those numbers and then have those numbers then do something else. So I can do a video capture. I can break down the matrix that that it's storing all the information in. So I can have all the pixels, and I can read the red, green, blue, and alpha value of each of the pixels. Those numbers are just being sent out, and I can do anything with those numbers. So I could turn those numbers into MIDI signals, or I could turn those numbers into audible sound, or I could turn those numbers into other color, or anything like that. You can add two video sources together, and it's basically blend them in different ways. So that's what's fun with Max, and that's sort of their, I forget, it's like fun with numbers, fun with math, but I think that's their current slogan, is like make anything do anything, something like that. Anyway, here, so now, what was the problem? Get it back to the original problem at hand. Is I want to manipulate MIDI. Very simple. So if I want to receive a MIDI information in, I'll create a new object by pressing N, say MIDI, and this is MIDI. These are all the different things that I can do with MIDI. MIDI in. That is going to now spit out raw MIDI data from if I have a MIDI source coming in. So first off, I am going to, let's see. Okay. So if I want to find out more information, here's how to learn how to do something in math. So I've never done anything in MIDI, let's say. So I'm going to say N for new, type MIDI. And so, find an object. This explains what it is. Lots of different MIDI objects that do different MIDI things. So anyway, I picked MIDI in. Now I click on this little, if I hover over it on the right hand side there's a little arrow, and this gives me the different things I can do with it. So these are the attributes. This is messages that I can send, or these are messages that I can send to the MIDI in object. Help is the main one that I do. I click help. Now it's going to open up the MIDI in help file. And the great thing about the help file is it's just a patch. So I can copy and paste things that are already made here. And then up at the top, there's import, basic information. So if I want MIDI in here, this is some of the information that I want. So I'm going to copy this, paste it into my, I unlocked it again. I unlocked it by pressing down the command button on the Mac and clicking on the background. It unlocks it so that I can manipulate the different objects. And that's the same as this lock button down in the lower right. So I'm going to paste, Control V, paste. So now what this is doing is there's the MIDI info object. I'll go through what each of these is. Load mess. So load mess is when the patch is loaded. When you first open up a patch, it will send a message, and this message is whatever you want it to be. Another way to do that is say load bang, and when the patch first loads up for the first time, it will send a bang, and then you can send that into a message object, which could say 0 or whatever you want it to do. So load mess, so that's MIDI info. That's, why is this, what is the, I can't remember what that number is doing. Oh, no, sorry, yeah, that's different. Okay, so anyway, the MIDI info is then now going to send, collect all of the different drivers that are coming in right now, the MIDI drivers that are available in to Max. So what I'm going to do here is I'll say wait, I thought I had that somewhere. Oh yeah, okay. So MIDI info. Now the next thing that was below that was a menu, and it's called a U menu. So I'm pressing N for new. If I type menu, one of the options here is U menu. It's a pop-up menu. So I'm going to click on that. This is now, it's basically a drop-down menu. Right now there's nothing in it. It's unpopulated. I can learn how to use it again by using the help button, and this shows you all the things you need to know about how to set different, how to use the U menu if you want to learn about it. So what is going to happen here is I'm going to say this is going to go into here, into the input of the U menu. And now I'm going to send a message that says MIDI devices. How did I know to do that? I can't remember. But if I click on that, nothing happens because that was the wrong. Oh, maybe I just bang it. I'll just send it a bang. That's right. That's nothing at all. So just sending it a bang, and it now has populated this drop-down menu with all of the available MIDI. This is MIDI out. This is the devices that will now, I can send MIDI out on. Now, if I want the messages that go into it, I can send it a bang, which will do that. I can do controllers. So I'm going to say controllers, and it automatically filled it in because it's near this, and it knows that that's something I want to tell it to do. So I'm going to click on that. And so now this is all of the inputs that I have. Now on my computer, I've got the Scarlett MIDI interface hooked up. That's for external devices. The driver bus, that's something which is an internal sort of loop back for MIDI on Mac, which I have enabled, which anyone can turn on that. I'm sure Windows has something like that. And then if you have Macs running, it's to Macs. Or else if it's the sending out, it's from Macs. These are just sort of running if you have Macs running. So you can just send MIDI to and from Macs quite easily. And so then in something else like Live or Ableton or VCV or something like that, you would just search for MIDI devices if Macs is running, and you will see from Macs, and you do that, and then when it's sending MIDI out, it'll show up there. So this is all I need for finding out the in and out information. So now I'm going to send it the information coming out from here. Again, this is the menu. I'm just going to use this menu or this message box coming into here just to monitor what messages are coming out. So if you plug it into the right hand side of the message box, you'll monitor what's coming out. So if I select that, I get 1. Now everything in Macs starts with 0, just like in computer programming. So if there are 4 items, then it's 0, 1, 2, and 3. And so this is telling me which item number it is. And then if I send a number into it, then it will cycle through without me having to do a drop-down menu. So I can automate what is coming out of it. If I go to the middle menu, it will send out the actual text that's coming out of it. And what is out of the right-hand one? It will tell me dump out. So that would give me, like, if I probably if I clicked on it or sent it some message, it would just send out a list of all the objects that are stored in this object. So I think I'm getting into too much detail here. I haven't even gotten to the MIDI part of it. I need to speed up here. So basically, if I was doing this in Max, I would, I'm clicking on this now, or what I will do now is instead of those, I'll say load bang object and click it into here. So again, every time I open up my Max patch, this particular patch, which is the saved program, it will send a bang, which will populate this. So every time I open this up, it will automatically populate this drop-down menu. And then I'm going to plug it out of here into this MIDI in. So now this MIDI in device is going to be listening from this, from here. Oh wait, no, sorry. It wasn't the bang that we want at all, because bang was, that's the output. We want input. So load mess is sending a message, and controllers. And I'm going to double click on this and it will send the message controllers. So now this is now the controllers that are coming in. So now I'm going to get something going just to send so we can monitor MIDI. So I've got Ableton here, since the original problem I wanted to solve was using an arpeggiator in Ableton. So we're going to be working with Ableton for this to solve this particular problem. So this is a new blank patch. I'm going to record into this. I've got my keyboard set up, so I'm just playing on my computer keyboard. I'm going to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So I'm going to record Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, how I wonder what you are. And just a little trill there to give it something a little more interesting. Did this work? Yeah, okay, here we are. Gonna shorten this. I'm really not, I've barely used Ableton for anything. Okay, so, but anyway, I think now it's playing out these notes. And MIDI from, okay, and then I'm going to say output 2, MIDI output 2, and you can see showing up here, I have the IAC driver bus. I have 2 max. I'm going to send it to 2 max 1. And so it's right now it's sending this MIDI, this little thing that I just played, 2 max 1 on channel 1. So I'm going to go back in here. So this should be receiving, this is 2 max. So this device here, the MIDI in device, should be receiving that set of notes. So the next thing to do is to take a look at it. So the MIDI in is going to be, what it's doing is it's receiving, again, we can look at the help reference. It will tell you this is not telling me anything. But over here I could learn more. There's like different, on the right-hand side, there are related things like Max tutorials and, nope, sorry, it's giving, this is for some reason still giving me the U menu. Don't save, close it, don't save. Okay, try it again. MIDI in, that was reference, I didn't want that. Reference is also information, useful information, but it doesn't have the help file, which is the actual patch. Try this again, help, MIDI in. Okay, here we can learn more information, messages, the port, all that stuff. This is all if you want to learn more about it. So anyway, I know that the information coming into the MIDI in is, if I say print, then everything coming into here will show up in the Max window on the side. This is the Max console. So as you can see here, it's printing all the different things that come into it. If I just sent it into a message, it's updating too fast to let me know everything that's going on. So I know from experience that the MIDI is basically, what's coming in is the basic MIDI note information, because that's all that's getting sent out of Ableton. So the MIDI note information is 3 pieces of information. First, the note, which is a number. Second is the velocity, which is a number from 0 to 127. 0 is off, and 127 is as loud as it can be. And then the third note that comes in is the channel number. So those are being spit out of here as a list. So if I say unpack, this is now each that's coming out as a list of 3 numbers at a time. So if I say unpack, then I'm going to say what I'm unpacking, how many things I want to unpack from the list. So it's going to be 3 numbers. The numbers are integers. So I'm going to say I space I space I. I believe I can also say unpack 0, 0, 0, just like an example of what it is that I'm unpacking. So that's an integer as well. If I wanted to unpack a floating point, then it would be, I'd say unpack 0 point, 0 point. And the dot means that it's it's an integer. Floating point. Okay, floating point number, not an integer. So anyway, unpack here. So now I'm going to, since I know it's integers, I'm going to plug in, make an integer box by pressing I. If I hit I, it will make this integer box. And so each of these that's coming in, and that's totally not working. That is not right at all. It's giving me, the MIDI in is giving me, oh, right. Yes. Sorry. This is giving me, it's giving raw. I have to parse it, right? Okay. So I'm not going to get rid of that. This is the whole process of Max, is like doing things wrong and then figuring out what you did wrong. So, okay, I'm going to leave my unpack, remove that. I have to do MIDI parse. Now this is interpreting the raw MIDI data. This is just raw data that's coming in. So now it's parsing the data. And so now it's going to tell me what each of the things coming out of here is. So here is the first one is a list of note on and the pitch and velocity. That's the basic thing. So I'm only unpacking 2 things now. So unpack I. So this is a list of note and velocity. So now we're getting the note and then the velocity. So it's going to be however fast it is. Right now it's 100. And then 0. So 0 is the note off. That's very important, that you have to follow the note on with the note off. And so if you don't send that, then your MIDI device that's receiving is just going to keep playing the note. And that's really annoying. So MIDI parse, and then at the second from last one is the channel. So this is the channel that's coming in. It's channel 1 it's transmitting on. If I change this to channel 2, this will now say it's on channel 2. So for if we wanted to randomly change the channel coming in, then what we would do is we'd then send it out. So we have to create an outlet too. So that's the inside of things. So then if I want to format it again, I'll say MIDI format. That's the opposite of MIDI parse, where it takes the individual information, these same pieces of information, and then packs it back into a MIDI list. And then the opposite of MIDI in, I'll say MIDI out. And that will send it back out again. So this is basically the opposite of what you have up there. And so for MIDI out, I have to tell it, stop doing that, the same thing as here. So I'm just basically making a copy. Oops. Grab these things here, holding Option as I move them, so I've duplicated them. So now I have the same thing here, except this MIDI info. I don't want it to be controllers. I want it to be bang, load bang. So now this is the available outlets. So I'm going to say this is from max 1. Then if I plug that into MIDI out, this is telling this device where to send it. So now I'm going to send it out and from max 1. If I wanted to send it out to hardware, I'd say I choose my Scarlett and then plug that into something else, which can some hardware synth that can receive MIDI. So I'm going to say from max 2. So that's where it's sending MIDI out. So then if I'm going to repack these 2 numbers. Actually, I don't even have to repack them. I could just bypass this and plug this straight into here. So now it's wrong one. So now it's sending it back out again. something's going haywire. Is it, oh yeah, because I'm over on live, it's creating a feedback loop because all ins it's receiving, oh no, and it's not recording. Good. I'll stop it from listening. But also I could say no input, and now it will stop listening. But I'm going to create another MIDI track and say input from max 2, channel 1, and you can see the little bouncing ball here. It's receiving, this is the message that the MIDI information that it's receiving from max. So if I wanted to be channel 2 instead of, so I'm saying it's channel, I'm going to send this onto channel 1 now. This is channel 1 coming in here, but if I wanted to swap it so it's channel 2 instead, I would say message 2, put that into the MIDI channel. I'm setting the MIDI channel, click, and now it's sending it out on MIDI channel 2. Okay, I'm making another one here. I'm going to make this channel 3 now. So this third Ableton track is listening on channel 3. So if I change this up here, I'll just make it a integer instead so I can scroll through. I'm going to type in 2. So now it's coming in 2. If I change this to 3, you can see now down here in live, it's switched over to channel 3. So to solve this, I now want to, I don't care about, no, I will care about that later. So now what I want to do is I want to randomly send a random number into here instead. Every time, here, yeah, get these out of the way. Every time there's a new note, I want to send a random number here, and let's say we want to do 8 channels. We're not going to do all 16 channels of this. So I'm going to load up now. I have a, oops, cancel. Okay, say I have 8 channels. So I'm going to say random 8. This is going to now pick a random number from 0 through 7 every time it receives a bang. So I'm going to take a look, monitor that, bang, click, 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 click. It's just sending random numbers every time. And now MIDI, it doesn't want to be channels 0 through 7. It wants to be channels 1 through 8. So I'm going to make another object here that is plus 1. And so now it's going to add 1 to everything that goes through it. Now I can put this in here automatically. If I hold down the shift, it will automatically add it to that path. So now this is going to be 1 through 8 instead of 0 through 1. So now I want this to bang every time. Change this channel here. This is now randomly changing the number. Don't need that one anymore. But I want it to happen every time a note comes in. Now I don't want it to happen every time something happens here. I could just say, put this here, and every time a MIDI message is coming through, it's updating it. But I don't want it to, but I want the off note to be able to follow the on note before it leaves that channel. So that means I want it to bang only after it's received the off note. So that's where it gets a little more complicated. So I'm saying unpack here. I want only if this is a 0 do I want to change it. So after the 0 has gone through, then I want to change it. Order of operations. In Max goes from right to left. So anything on the right happens before the left, which is important to know. All right. So, all right, sorry, I was just looking at, I've been doing this for half an hour now. I probably won't get into the Max for Live part of it. I'll just do this part of it now, just the Max part, and then do the Max for Live another time. So, right, every time we want this to be 0. So basically this, we don't care about what channel's coming in at all. So I'll just sort of ignore that. This number here, only if it's 0 do we want it to bang. So for that, I'm going to do a root. And so what this is going to do is I'm putting 0. So here, if you send a message into it, this is the number or list to be routed. On the out, it says output, only if the input matches 0, it's going to come out of this side. Otherwise, it's going to come out of here if it's not 0. So I'm putting it in here. And I'm going to put a bang. So you can see that every time a 0 happens, this is going to bang. And every time a non-zero happens, this one's going to bang. Let me go slower just so we can check that. So you can see all the numbers, it's banging. Every time it's not 0, it does that. But then as soon as I hit 0, boom, the left-hand one bangs. So we know that this is basically a way of checking, so it's only passing through 0. So every time 0 happens, it's going very fast, but basically it's only banging after 0. So I'm now going to put that into the random. So every time, so now it's not banging every time a message comes in, it's banging only every time the message is 0. If I want to clean these up, I can say Command Y and it will align them. They're already aligned. Okay. So, and we don't need to have the number box going in here. I could just bypass the number box and go straight into the MIDI format. But the number box is useful for monitoring what's happening. So now it should be randomly picking a number and sending it out. So let's go back over here. You can get rid of these. I'm going to make more MIDI channels coming in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're all from Max 2. So this one's channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4, channel 5, channel 6, channel 7, channel 8. And you can see, sure enough, it's randomly pinging which one it goes to. And that was what we wanted to do. And it's turning off too. That's the important thing. Now, if we wanted to make sure that it was going in the right order, there's one other thing. I don't think I ever use it in this patch, but say I wanted to, I'll just show the trigger. T is for trigger, is to send an output to many places. So if I want a trigger to do, say, 3 bangs, bang, I'll say B space B space B. So now it's going to send 3 bangs out for everything that comes in. So if I send a trigger into it, so if I put this into here, it's going to send a bang out of each of these, but going from right to left. So if I wanted to make sure that, so I know that this is happening first before this comes in, but we want to make sure that the bang goes into, it receives the bang before switching the channel. Wait, is that happening here? It was working, but it could be. I'm thinking about that wrong. This might actually be having a, I think these are turning off. Well, this would be the way to make sure that, so what I'm thinking about right now is root coming in. I want this to be, this is every time this is 0, it's going to set the number here and change the channel. But I want the channel to happen after the 0 has gone through. And so what I would do here. Thinking about it. Well, basically, if I wanted to make sure that this happened before this or the other way around, I would say trigger, bang, bang. I'd put this in here. And the first one that comes out, output order 1, output order 2, the first one would go into there and bang the output, and the second one would go in here and change the channel. I don't think I need to do that, but that would be the use for it. But you can also do other things, like you could say complicated things like trigger, and then you could pass through. You could say bang, integer, bang. So the bang, as soon as a number comes into here, for instance, if you have a number coming into here, then every time it receives the number, it will send a bang first, then the number to wherever you want it to go, and then the bang again. Anyway, this was working. I believe I tested it. So I'm going to wrap this up now. But I'm not even getting into Max for Live at all. But the problem with this is, for creating a Max for Live instrument is within Max, over here you can see Max for Live MIDI effect. I can drag down here and create a Max patch. If I click on this little button, it will open it up. And this is the MIDI effect. This is the MIDI. Oops. This is the effect that's within Ableton. And so what it does is it has the MIDI in and MIDI out built into it already. So this is automatically receiving the MIDI information from whatever track in Ableton it's from, and this is sending it back out to that track. So what I would do here is just MIDI in and MIDI out. I would stick this random sorting bit into between this MIDI in and MIDI out. I would just put that into this patch, and it will send it out. It will do all that work. But the problem is, if it's a Max for Live object, this is something I learned after building this. If it's a Max for Live object, then it just basically completely discards all of Max's control over MIDI. And so this information, this MIDI format, and sending the channel out, like it just ignores the channel. It's just sending it back to whatever track you're in Ableton. And so that makes that useless. So then I went through a completely different approach, which is to use the send and receive objects in Max, which is send, or you could just say S, and I say, I'll just make up a name. So waffle. So this is a send object now. So here, if I send this is this note, this information coming here. It's basically, instead of, it's a wireless patch cable. So I'm going to make another object that's a receive object, R, waffle, give it the same name, and basically it's now a wireless way of sending it from here to here. And you can have as many instances of it as you want all over the place. So that's a very handy way if you have places, a number of places around your patch where you want to send to the same place, or a bunch of things to receive. So I could have one metronome, for instance, sending out to the metronome, and then receive that metronome a whole bunch of different places. It will receive it all at the same time. So, and this will transmit across your entire computer from one patch to another. So if I have a completely separate Max, this is a different Max patch here. I'm going to say receive waffle. It's receiving it here as well. And so what I can do now is I made a Max for Live device, a receiver device, that, so instead of sending it out on a MIDI channel here, this MIDI format, instead of sending it to MIDI out, what I did was made it so that it was send, and then waffle channel, or whatever you want to call it. So now, if I'm receiving any other patch, will be receiving all of that information. Of course, this is now the MIDI format, so it's not, that's also spelled wrong. So this is the information. It's all the information, so I'd have to parse it out again. And so you could have multiple copies, multiple versions of that. So I could have a bunch of different patches, which are, you know, multiple copies of the same patch. And so that way, then you can take the channel information, sort it out, and determine which track is receiving on which channel. So it's not really a MIDI channel, it's just a max channel. So anyway, I could show more of that, but I'm going a little bit long here. Well, I will show it. I just won't build it. I'll just show the final patch and explain it. We don't need that. Don't need that. So I'm going to, don't save, don't need that, don't need this. I'm going to say open. Thinking. Okay. So this is my final patch here. I think you can probably hear it. I can't hear it because I'm not monitoring what's going on, but so you can see here in this, I've got my sort sender, the final one. This is the final patch. I have it in presentation mode, which I'm not going to get into today at all, but that's where you can clean things up and make it visible. So here we have, this is the sort sender. So what it's doing is the MIDI in, it's parsing the information like we had before. It's directly sending the note information, the pitch and velocity straight into the output. But then it's going to change up the channel. So every time what's happening here is it's unpacking it, it's routing it to a different number. I have here, I'm determining how many channels you want to send it to. You could randomly send it to only 4 channels. You could send it up to 16 channels. Because it's not actually MIDI, we could actually do as many as we want. And so it will randomly, and that will change the number of channels here, even though this is 8. 8 is now the default, but it will do however many channels you want. This is just a monitor to monitor what channel it's going back out on. It's packing that info. So now it's sending, this is the send object, send channel sorter, I call it. And so the MIDI channel on this is not actually doing anything with MIDI, but it's information that we're sending out. So now on all of these receive tracks, we have the sort receiver max patch. Okay, just quickly explain this. Get out of here. Okay, so this is now the MIDI format. Now over here it says the receive channel sorter, MIDI parse. It's breaking that information up again, and so this is all the information that's going in. The parse this is the MIDI channel, and so now I'm saying root, and so it's going to select just like before. It's now going to root whenever the MIDI channel matches whatever number we select here, and you can set this to be channel 5, for instance. Now every time instead of 1, it will say 5. Every time the channel on the input is 5, it will now pass through the message, the number, and then here this will bang if it doesn't match. So it's if it's any other ones, it will close. Oh no, so here I've got the message. So every time it is the number that I want. So every time it's, say, channel 5 for this one, it's going to click on this message box, and the message box on this is a 1. And so 1 going into this switch object will open up the switch. And then every time, and it will pass through, this is the MIDI parse, this is the information, so it will pass through the note info when this is open. And then when this is not 5, it will 0, it will close the switch, and then it will stop passing through the information. So basically this switch will only pass through to the MIDI format on this particular channel when it's the channel I want it to be. And so that is identical on each of these. Oops. So down here, I can close this up. Don't want to save it. So here I have this one is set to channel down here, channel 1, set this one to channel 2 down here. This one is set to channel 3. that's how it's working. So the one final thing that I sort of flew through that last bit, so I'm not sure. That's the basic overview. I went a little fast at that last part, but we don't need any of this. The last thing I was going to say is what I learned. The first Max device I ever made is for the send and receive. If you don't want it sending off throughout the entire system and you want to keep this send and receive only within, because I had several instruments which were running the same Max device that I had, and they were interfering with each other because they were using send and receive. This is something I learned, is you say dash, dash, dash before the name. Dash, dash, dash. And now it will only send and receive. Waffle will be unique within this particular patch window. And so if I have multiple patches running which are the same, they won't listen to each other. It will keep it within this one. That's just a little more advanced thing. Anyway, all right, that was a little more rambling, but I will wrap it up. Thanks for listening. Oh, sorry, I missed the any chat that was going on. All right. I see some chat here. Any other questions? I flew through that. If anyone was listening and actually following what I was doing, anything I went through too fast or unclearly, please let me know. I would like to do more Max explanations, but this is the first time I ever did this. I'm not really not an explainer. I haven't organized it very well, so this is definitely learning what that you can't cram too much into one session. So anyway, I'd like to do more of this at some point in the future, but perhaps I will figure it out a little bit better. But thanks for listening, and have a nice day.